Howdy, I'm Dodge. I've played and homebrewed D&D 5th edition for about 4 years. I run a moderately sized D&D Westmarch, as well as a few home games, and I'm currently in the slow process of making my own system. This video here is a part of a small series where I go over various aspects of game creation and balance that I pay attention to when making homebrew or abilities for my own games, and today I'm going to be talking about gateways. Gateways are a game design term that I made myself while homebrewing on my D&D 5th edition server, although gateways as a concept can be applied to anywhere. Today I'm going to be going over what a hard gateway is, what a half gateway is, what a soft gateway is, and how to power scale gateways, and I'll give an example of some abilities with varying levels of gateways. First off, what is a hard gateway? A hard gateway is a step for an ability to do a thing that is attached to a roll. This thing can be anything from simple damage to applying conditions. A hard gateway is often an attack roll, a saving throw, or a contested ability check. Hard gateways are often looked at by feature designers, but probably not always considered in depth for less experienced designers. Secondly, what is a half gateway? A half gateway is a gateway that, even if the ability doesn't pass the gateway, something happens. Oftentimes this is attached to damage, or half damage for a spell. Half gateways are, in my experience, often underrated. A half gateway is very valuable, because, well, damage is damage, and even if it's a small amount of damage doing something, it's always better than doing nothing. Third, what is a soft gateway? A soft gateway is a step for an ability to do a thing that isn't attached to a roll. That I am aware of, every ability in the game has a soft gateway. This can be things such as needing sight, having a range, relying on damage, a type of condition, or being attached to a magical item. One of the most important soft gateways is the level that you need to be to access an ability. Though the name might not imply it, soft gateways are often more considered than hard gateways, due to examples such as level access and ranges being intrinsic to balance. Fourth, we're going to go over how to power scale gateways. Hard gateways are relatively easy to balance. My general rule for hard gateways is that each added gateway makes the feature 50% worse. A feature that is just an attack is going to be better than a feature that does the same thing but takes an attack and a saving throw. So oftentimes, features that are under more than one gateway are stronger than features that are only under one. An example of this could be Stunning Strike from Monks. It being under two gateways makes it slightly less powerful, especially considering the soft gateways of being a Constitution save, which, on average, is a lot worse than other saves, and it using a resource, which limits the amount of times you can use it. But, due to the fact that it is under so many gateways, the effect itself is drastically more powerful than an attack. Balancing around soft gateways are kind of an entirely different subject to tackle, but I'm going to go through them and give some examples of more common soft gateways when considering balance, and how you should look at them from a design perspective. I'm more familiar with D&D 5th edition, so I'm going to be giving examples from that system, but the logic of each of these can apply to each system with a little bit of work figuring out the numbers. One example of a soft gateway could be level of access to a feature. This is looking at how far into a game do I need to be before I can access this feature, because generally speaking, the further you are into a game, the more powerful your features are going to be. So, a more powerful feature in early game would be considered an average feature in late game due to the fact that you are fighting tougher things and could be doing more in general. An example of this could be really any feature that you find in late game being applied to early game. For example, a 9th level spell, once you get them, are fine most of the time. But if you are a level 1 character getting access to a 9th level spell from a feature, that feature most likely is going to be overpowered. My general rule of thumb when trying to balance out soft gateways of level is looking at other features of a similar level that are considered average for that, and trying to gauge them to be about as powerful as those average level features. Another example of a soft gateway is the range of a feature. A feature that has a range of 5 feet is going to be less versatile and powerful than a feature with a range of 120. There is a certain range that increasing the range doesn't really increase the power of a feature, although this range generally is dependent on the area it's being used for. For example, a range of 120 feet wouldn't matter any more than a range of 60 feet in a dungeon that doesn't have any dimensions over 60 feet. Generally speaking, my rule of thumb for ranges being a soft gateway is If a feature is considered melee, so for me that is anything within 15 feet for D&D 5th edition, then it can be about 20% stronger than a feature that has a large range. A good example of this is Inflict Wounds being drastically more damage than something like Guiding Bolt, but having a 5-foot reach instead of a 120-foot reach. A final example that I'm going to give of a soft gateway is resistance and immunities. For example, in D&D 5th edition, certain damages and conditions are more common to find resistance and immunities for than others. Poison damage, for example, has far more creatures with immunity than thunder damage does, so something that's doing thunder damage is going to be doing better than something that is doing poison damage. Generally speaking, this is a little bit hard to gauge, because unless you have an extreme example such as poison damage, most things are within the ballpark of being near each other. This is kind of something that a more new designer wouldn't need to worry themselves too hard for. Half gateways are another interesting balance for gateways. It's generally hard to gauge how important a half gateway is to the power of a feature, as a half gateway's power is always the worst case scenario, although it is definitely something to keep note of when balancing. For example, Fireball would be drastically less powerful if on a pass creatures took no damage, and something like Catapult would be drastically better if on a pass a creature still took half damage. I like to look at half gateways as creating a net for a feature. It gives the lowest possible negative to any given feature, and additionally, it gives a potentially powerful feature, which is guaranteed damage. Guaranteed damage is good on pretty much every feature, as damage, generally speaking, is pretty hard to compete with when it comes to usefulness of a feature. Most guaranteed forms of damage can come with resource cost, but some forms of it can be accessed to via features that don't use resources. One notable example of this is the Evocation Wizard's 6th level feature that takes all evocation cantrips that rely on saves and goes from full gates to half gates, turning their cantrip saves from something below average, versus attacking cantrips that is, to something that is well above even some leveled spells. Alrighty, now to our examples. I'm going to be giving one example of each level of hard gate that I can find, and then a few notable soft gates as well. I may miss a few unique gates, so if you find any that I missed, feel free to point them out in the comments. Magic Missile, the staple 0-gate spell. You use it, it does its damage, and that's about the end of it. Notably, Magic Missile has very few soft gates. It works up close, it has a range of 120 feet, very few things in the game are immune to force damage, and the only real threat of a soft gate is the shield spell. Half gate. The staple example of a half gate is Fireball, but a half gate with a lower soft gate would be Shatter. Though it has a lower range, it uses a better damage type and can be acquired by level 3. But these are examples of gates not meaning everything in balance, as Fireball does more damage than an average spell of 3rd level, and generally speaking is considered overpowered. Full gate. This would be a basic attack, or a spell attack, such as Inflict Wounds. They have one attack, and on a miss, they do nothing. Gate and a half. A gate and a half would be the use of a Battlemaster maneuver, such as Trip Attack, after an attack. No matter what, the extra damage still applies to the attack, but another effect will apply upon the fail of a save. A double gate would be Stunning Strike, done by monks. This is an attack followed by a save, and if this save is passed, then nothing happens. And if the attack misses, well, you never get to do the save. Some notable soft gates, at least for D&D 5th edition that is, would be Poison Damage, which as a damage gate is one of the worst soft gates to have. Constitution saves are also, generally speaking, considered well below average compared to the average save, that is. Another common soft gateway would be a feature that relies on the frightened or charmed condition, as, generally speaking, in higher levels, you run into quite a few monsters or enemies that are immune to frightened and charmed. Well, that's all I have today. Hope you have a good one.